It's Advent. Freight train to Christmastown has left the station. Things are happening, and as a pastor, as like a just regular person, I get a little excited. I'm an enthusiast, if you haven't noticed. I like when the decorations come out. My wife is like double that with Christmas decorations. She's like, Thanksgiving's over, let's get the tree up. She's really excited about it. But as a pastor, I will say, one of the things I get really pumped about is, guys, we get to talk about rapture theology. One will be left. Oh, man, one will be taken away. I'm like, wow, this is dramatic. And I come about this very honestly, as I was, when I was about 7 years old, raised in Florida. Football is king in Florida, so I was playing Pop Warner flag football as a little kid. And we had an away game at a new field that I had never been to before, so I'd never seen their scoreboard. That also means I'd never heard their, horns before. Well, that week, I had been at my friend's, vacation Bible school. And he went to a little more evangelical, a little more fundamentalist church. You guys, you seen the billboards? Do you know where you're going to go when you die? I was getting a lot of that. A lot. Like, when the trumpet blows, what's going to happen? And I was like, as a 7-year-old, I'm like, whoa, this is dramatic. So I've been getting a steady diet of that for about 4 days before this happened. So I'm playing football at this new field, and I get handed the ball, and I'm running, and it's 7-year-olds, so half the kids don't even know where the football is. But I'm off to the races. I'm going to the end zone, but it's nearing the half, and the horn goes off before I get to the end zone. The play continues, right? But the horn goes, "Mah, mah," and I go, because I have never heard that before. And I'll tell you, I've been hearing a lot about horns this past week. And I'm like, this is Gabriel, bud. He's blowing that horn, and this is it, guys. It's rapture time. And I'm standing there 10 yards from the end zone, and I'm like, I got to look at the crowd to see if my mom and dad and brothers are still there. I mean, my brothers are definitely still going to be there. But I'm looking for parents, right, because I'm still here. Well, what's happening? And I just see the whole people going what is this? I'm 7. And I'm like, oh, I guess we still play football. The rapture's happened. I guess we still play football. And I thought, as I walked into the end zone, I really was like, am I bad then? Have I been left behind? Oh no, am I doing this all wrong? At 7, having this existential crisis. I should have known I was going to be a pastor right then. I'm having this dread. But I think what it was the reason I was so caught up in it and fascinated still with it today is that isn't really a part of our tradition, talking about the rapture, about the end of days, a fight with the Antichrist, this dragon from Revelations and all this stuff. It just wasn't something we talked about, but I think it's because I'm from a tradition, like many of you, that's really talking a lot about the teachings of Jesus. And I will, spoiler alert, Jesus don't talk a lot about dragons. Jesus doesn't talk about this. He talks about here and now. He talks about there will be times of struggle ahead. But he speaks of it in a very practical way of there will be tides of violence. There will be rising tides of sometimes hatred, distrust, doubt. But in terms of this very specific holy war, I never got that. So I've been mesmerized by this. And I think what it is my interpretation, being focused on Jesus, maybe modifies my sort of observation even of this season, of preparing, getting ready. I think this lesson today, particularly, is one used by a lot of rapture theology folks. One will be left behind, one will be in the field, one will be taken away. I really think if we look at this, go through this together, I think we might perhaps find a different interpretation than the very popular rapture theology that we are seeing in culture at times. Many of us have noticed in the first bit of this reading, it says, no one knows the day or the time. No one. We seem to have forgotten that, as a lot of people have tons of opinions about the day and the time and what's going to happen. But I think the most important thing is right before he gets into this, he says, it'll be like the days of Noah. Now, we know this story, right? We know it. We put it in kids' rooms for some reason about the flood and the ark and all this stuff. But we talk about this thing. I think there is something really powerful in saying it's like the days of Noah. People were going about their business, and then this rising tide comes once they've entered the ark that washes all these people away. Do you not want to be left behind in this situation? And by that I mean, do you want to be caught up in a flood? Washed away? I don't know if, I read the story. They all died, guys. The people washed away died. It was the people in the boat that were okay. They were called blessed. So when we get into this, it says, just like that, so it will be when the Son of Man arrives. One will be taken away, and one will still be there. And I was like, well, then I don't know if do I not want to be left behind? I'm referencing the book series, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm thinking about this and struggling with this interpretation that somehow God's going to, with his wrath, wipe us out, and some people aren't going to have to deal with it. They'll be taken away. And I think about it. I think about Jesus and ask myself, okay, so which role does Jesus fit in this story? Jesus was born into a world of political division, in conquest. He was an occupied nation. People were mad. There was rebellions, fight, violence. And Jesus was born in the midst of this. I wonder, did Jesus partake in Roman occupation or Roman military might? No. Jesus was born in the midst of struggle and violence, rising tides of that, and he wasn't caught up in it. He wasn't swept away. Jesus doesn't respond to military occupation with military action. In fact, as we follow along, Jesus kind of submits to it. And then the political violence gets so heated because he's not doing what he's supposed to do, which is the expectation people had, that he'd be this conqueror. He would get caught up in this violence, and he'd be like, let's repay violence for violence. I'm going to get my sword out and ride a war horse into Jerusalem, sit on the throne. He doesn't do that. And people get frustrated. They're waiting for him to do the thing. But Jesus doesn't get caught up in that tide of violence. And instead, he submits to it and he gets crucified. And a lot of us are right then to say, so he died. The early disciples even were like, oh no, did we mess up? He's dead. He submitted to violence. Nonviolence didn't work, guys. He said, put away your swords. And now he's dead. Spoiler alert, we know the story where it goes from there. As we celebrate Easter, right, we talk about he goes into the tomb, sure, but he comes back out alive. He comes back out, emerges from the tomb, not too different than the people who emerge from the ark, right? They somehow go through this and remain unscathed. Somehow Jesus crucified is risen again. And I have to say, with popular sort of rapture theology of this great war with evil, am I to understand the second coming of Jesus is going to be wildly different than his first? By that, I mean, is Jesus going to go, I am not going through that cross stuff again. It's time for me to get a big tank. It's time for me to get some bulletproof glass on this thing and roll through here and really start fighting. I worry sometimes that's how we get. That's how a lot of folks get. They go, it's time to stack up the guns. It's time to fill up our doomsday prepping. because things are going to get violent, am I to understand Jesus is going to come in this way? Another then question arises, just like I had when I was a little kid, looking at that end zone and going, am I doing this right? What are we doing? I asked myself, then what? Okay, so if Jesus lived in the midst of this, floated around in this violence, what are then we to do in the face of such evil? I'm sure many of us could name many injustices that exist in the world. What are we to do? Just stand there, let it overtake us, do nothing? I would argue Jesus didn't do nothing. And his followers didn't do nothing either. Nonviolence was a real thing. That's like saying what Martin Luther King Jr. did was nothing. He did nothing. No, there is something to resisting rising tides of violence, hatred, evil, violence against your neighbor. There is something profound in that. I love that Advent is oftentimes connected to the same things that are connected to, sometimes Advent talks about being pregnant, expectation of waiting for this baby, very appropriately with Jesus. I think of that the same way I think of preparing in general. Preparing for a baby, if you've never done that, is no small matter. It's very busy. There's a lot happening. It's not just folding baby blankets. My wife's not here, but if she was, I'd say this for innumerable, with great admiration and truth. She wasn't doing nothing while cooking a baby. Women who have had babies, you know, it's hard. It's hard to do this, but it's intentional. It's not, preparing for a baby is not doomsday prepping, usually. Preparing for a baby is intentional, it's thoughtful, it's done with fear and love. How am I going to do this well? Not getting swept up in the tides of anger and violence might be what we are being called to in Advent, is very quite simply acting like Jesus. Being born in a time where he was born, to not get swept up in that. For Jesus not to be some rebellious revolutionary, but instead a revolutionary of nonviolence and love, was profound. Did Jesus say to the world in the midst of this, it's time to fight fire with fire? Did Jesus say, okay, it's so bad here, we need to withdraw to the caves and to our bunkers to make sure we're not living in the midst of this sinful world? Or did Jesus sit with people? Did Jesus touch people who are untouchable? Did Jesus feed those who are hungry? Did Jesus advocate for the care of all people? Did he advocate radical generosity? Did he live a life that was clearly reflective of a bright faith, a beautiful hope that God is going to restore the world and we have a chance to take part in it right now? Put away your swords, he said. What we are called to do in this season is the same thing we've been called to our whole lives, which is love your neighbor, grow goodness, practice forgiveness, because we know that tides rise, and oftentimes those tides are bad ones, but we will resist any invitation to meet evil for evil, to meet violence for violence. We will resist the notion that is widely perpetrated across our world that we can just hurt the world better. Through our power, our violence, we will make the world peaceful. We will resist that notion. We will, like our carpenter of a teacher, not pick up swords, but pick up hammers. In the midst of rising tides, we are going to make boats. We're going to make big boats with big tables for as many people as we can, to let them know there is another story than these rising tides, injustice, whatever it is. We will tell a different story, and you are welcome in this boat. This is Advent. And every day in the midst of Advent, in our whole lives, we will attend to one another. And what I say this is this is watchfulness. This is preparation for the Lord's coming. Is living now as it will be then. That's what we say in our prayer, right? Your kingdom come here as it will be. If we're doing that, the healing, the helping, the comforting, I think of myself looking at the end zone, wondering if I'm doing this right. Y'all, if we can do that stuff, love our neighbors, love daringly, confidently, guys, we are doing it right. Because it's right by our neighbors. It's right by ourselves. And most importantly, it's right by God too. And for that I say thanks be to God and blessings on all of your Advent journeys. Amen.